when you say yes to something that you really don't want to, you feel anger towards the person who asked you, and you feel anger towards yourself. Because now you said you put on more on your plate that you couldn't even handle. And you are committed to something that you might or may not be able to do.
Welcome to Lessons in Leverage, the podcast that takes you behind the scenes of success. We'll help you unlock the secrets of leverage so you can amplify your impact in the world. Here is your host, Spencer Lowe.
Welcome back to another episode of Lessons in Leverage. Today I'm excited to be joined by my friend Sherban. And before we dive into his story, which is definitely one you're going to want to listen to, I just want to thank you for listening and invite you, if you haven't already, to go check out our YouTube channel, subscribe there, find us on social media. You can find all of the links to everything that we're doing on lessonsinleverage.com. And so if you only listen on the podcast, please come connect with us, give us your feedback, send some comments so we can hear from you and keep shaping the show to be as valuable as possible and helping you have a bigger impact in the world and wield more leverage. That being said, let me give you a quick introduction to Sherban. So with nearly 20 years in the technology industry, Sherban has risen from technician to program manager in the dynamic semiconductor field. However, this rapid ascent came at a cost, which was burnout. I'm sure you've never dealt with that. But after almost a decade of chasing the American dream, Sherban found himself disillusioned and drained. Determined to reclaim his life, he embraced a growth mindset, sparking a transformative journey that reignited his passion and drive. This shift led him to conquer new challenges, from running marathons to scaling Mount Kilimanjaro and building a career he truly loves. Today, he's a professional speaker, a trainer, a coach, and Sherban is committed to helping others overcome burnout, discover fulfillment, and achieve lasting success. Sherban, I said just jokingly during the introduction, I'm sure no one's dealt with it, but the truth is, in a technology-driven world, in a fast-paced world that we live in, I don't know anybody that hasn't struggled at some point with burnout. Even people that feel like they've got a growth mindset, feel like they've got a really good mindset. I watch time and time again as my employees, friends, family members end up confronting this feeling of burnout. So before we dive into solving that, because I know you have a lot to share on that, I wanted to start by going back to your childhood and your upbringing, because it's a unique upbringing. Tell us about where things started for you in Romania and what your journey was like coming to the U.S. and some of that evolution of being to this new country and wanting to pursue the American dream.
Yeah, first of all, thank you for having me. It's awesome to talk to you and share some of the stories that have shaped me and have probably helped someone on this podcast. Like you said, I was born in Romania, and I most of my childhood, I grew up there. I came to the United States when I was 23, looking for a better life for myself. Because in Romania, growing up, there was not a whole lot of abundance. Now things are a little bit different, but when I was growing up, there were just a few options that would provide a semi-stable path, and even that one wasn't sure enough. So there was a certain track that society, my parents, set out for myself, and that was the path that I was set to walk on, only to come to the United States with the idea that I'm going to make some money and just be a little more financial secure, and realize that there's a level of abundance and a better future for myself here. The reason why I say that is because, of course, not having a lot of money, we had to deal with many uncertainties. So having food on the table, my mom was good enough to where she never really made it apparent that we didn't have enough food. But, you go to school and you have 5 times a week just bread and jelly. You kind of question, are we poor? So then you're asking about my upbringing. One thing that comes to mind is the fact that my parents, from a younger age, they took me to the countryside and helped them farm. And that was something that was very challenging for me, a little bit of a rebellious nature, because I wanted to play and they were very insistent on helping them work the land, and I hated it with a passion. But hindsight, you look at things that shaped you throughout your life. And now being in America, I realized that one of the things that has made me a hard worker and pursuing the American dream was that hard labor that my parents wanted me to just help out the family. And I can go from there in many different directions. Feel free to ask which way we want to go.
Certainly. Well, the first thing I wanted to dig into a little bit here is we live in a time where I think people take for granted the opportunity that's available in America. And so I just wanted to highlight and maybe dig into that a little bit, because in order to use leverage, in order to have leverage, there have to be systems in place that allow you to build leverage. And capitalism is a system that is predicated on being able to build leverage in several different ways. And that system is not universally available. That's not the same system that's available to everyone in every single country. When you made that shift coming over here, what were some of the things that stuck out to you that you noticed that people here just took for granted or didn't seem to appreciate or understand, that for you were either novel or really powerful concepts in helping you be able to grow and have opportunity?
Yeah, I mean, the biggest one that comes to mind is the idea of, if you work hard, you're going to make it here in America. In Romania, it wasn't guaranteed. I've seen people work a full-time job and after work go and slave at a second and third job just to make ends meet. And it was very, very sad to see, so much effort put in by so many of friends and family and other people, and not be able to sustain a decent lifestyle. And then coming here to America and realizing that I can work a regular 9-to-5 job and have the security of a roof over my head, food on my table, and transportation and other securities that I couldn't even imagine in Romania. It was earth-shattering, and to be honest, that was one of my main drivers of pursuing what I thought the American dream was here in America.
Yeah, I think that's such a powerful thing, because there's so many things we have available to us that we do take for granted very easily, where you assume that certain things that are common in America, like having a roof over your head and being able to just provide meals and these basic necessities, that's just a given. But there are countries where it is absolutely not a given and where people don't have those things. And so when you realize that, then you start to have a different mindset of gratitude, which changes how you feel about each level development. Instead of being like, man, I got to be the richest person on Instagram, it's like, look, life is good and I have an opportunity to keep building on that. Yeah. Just because I'm not starving, I'm not homeless, I'm not, without transportation, I'm not missing the basic necessities to be able to start to work hard and build a life here. And so I love that perspective. I appreciate you sharing it.
Yeah. I actually want to add to that, because it's very powerful what you say. And I've noticed, even after coming to America and making something of myself and building a secure lifestyle, I recognize that I became very complacent and took many of these things for granted. And it happens to all of us, because oftentimes we are so focused on only the things that we want, and we don't pay attention on all the things that we are fortunate to have. Yeah. And there's this duality to where the only time when we feel grateful for something is when we don't have it. So we take our health, for example, for granted until we're sick. Then when we're sick, all we want is, we don't want money, we don't want a shiny car, all we want is to be healthy.
It's so true. One of my favorite quotes, I think it was originally an Indian proverb, but it was the man with his health has a million dreams and the man without it has only one. Yeah. And it's that exact principle you just described, that is, we take things for granted until we can't. And have you discovered, this might be getting ahead of ourselves a little bit, but in terms of having a strong mindset, are there certain things you do or have learned that have helped you to stay grateful and stay feeling happy with all of the things you already have, even as you are pursuing the things that you may not?
Yeah, and we are jumping a little bit ahead, because that's one of the things that throughout my transformation is a pillar of my my now sanity and peace of mind that I have and the success that I feel is this sense of gratitude that I instilled in me early in the morning. So I am very diligent about making sure that the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, I sit down and I have a journal where I put 3 things that I'm grateful for. And I couldn't tell you 100% sure that revolutionized and changed my mind completely. But I've learned from science that when we wake up, we are negativity biased. So we are constantly scanning for threats that are in our lives. That might be a nasty email from a boss, might be a fight with a loved one, or plans that we have to do that we have to scramble because we're so busy. So we're constantly looking at all those threats in our lives instead of really focusing on the things that we have, that lack versus that abundance. So I make a point to make sure that I am grateful and I set my mind into a positive state, which sets the day. And I feel like it has a ripple effect in the whole day.
It has to have a ripple effect. There's no way that it can't have an impact. I mean, the man that is ungrateful can never have enough. And the man that is grateful already has everything he needs. And so if you start by being grateful, you have what you need. And so that mindset, then what can you accomplish when you already have what you need, when you're already in a safe, strong position? If you're starting your day with, oh no, I don't have what I need, there's these problems, there's, all these issues, you're in a state of fear. Nobody does good work in a state of fear. Nobody can achieve their true potential based on fear long term. In some cases, short term, it's a great motivator. Long term, it's not going to be sustainable. So yeah, I think that's such an important distinction. All right, so before we go through some more of the important skills that you've learned and that you teach, take me through then, you're in the States, you're building a life for yourself. You had a long career in technology. What was that like? And what was maybe the turning point where you finally said, something's got to change. Things are not okay. Even though I'm doing well, I'm pursuing the American dream, I'm building something, I'm building a life here. What shifted for you, and what experiences did you have with burnout that really started to become a defining moment for you?
Yeah. But so when I came to the United States, I had a vision of what a successful life is about. And that vision was not necessarily mine. It was projected on me by my parents, by society, by friends, and social media. Actually, social media wasn't at that point, but commercials and other things. And I kind of look at it as this stiff train track where I knew that I had to get my education, get my red brick home, get married, have kids, save for retirement, go on vacation 2 or 3 times. And I was on that train track. I was chugging along, and slowly I was able, because of my upbringing and having a thirst for pursuing something, and I was willing to work hard, I've checked those boxes one after the other, only to find myself at one point where I was chugging along and I felt hollow. Like I had everything that society told me that is going to make me happy and content. And I was burned out, checked out, and was just moving through life with no desire, nothing. And I felt an emptiness, and which was weird because, like you say, I had all this abundance, but for some reason, something inside was missing. And I can continue and say that in that moment, well, it took me a few years because I was staying in that state for quite a few years, and I was coasting through life. And I always say that when we're coasting, the only direction that you can go through is downhill. And that's pretty much what was happening to me. And fortunately for me, my wife nudged me to listen to a podcast about personal development where I listened to Les Brown, and I kind of got a feel for the idea of a growth mindset. And then I read the book Mindset by Carol Dweck, and it was like this shining light. There's an obvious thing that it's said in the book Mindset that I've never really grasped until I read it, which is the idea of a fixed mindset versus a growth mindset, where you either are talented and you can achieve so much more, or you're fixed and you're limited on what you can achieve. And in that moment, I realized that I don't want to be on the train track anymore. I want to go off trail and carve my own path and build something that I want, not what society tells me to do. And mindset, the growth mindset, says that if you put your mind to anything, you can achieve it. It's just going to take a lot of time, a lot of dedication, and a lot of drive. So that's when my transformation finally started.
And so you're reading this book and you're like, all right, the problem is my mindset.
Mm-hmm.
So then now what? What do you do about that? What shifts for you? Do you decide, all right, I'm changing careers? Do you decide that you're going to change some of your practices? What were some of the next steps? Because I think there's a lot of people who get to that point and realize they have a problem and then find something that might be a good solution for that problem. And then they go, okay, and they get distracted. They go right back to life. And 6 months or a year later, they're back to being burnt out and empty again.
Correct.
Repeat the cycle and repeat. So what changed for you that took you in a new direction?
So you said something that's very important, and is that idea of becoming aware, because most of us are in a trance, just distracted by the news, by sports, by our job, by kids. We're so consumed of everything else that we hardly have a time to reflect on what is it exactly that we want. And for me, I first got that self-awareness that I don't want that lifestyle anymore. I want something different. And then the book mindset told me that if I want something, I need to explore and figure out things that might become more interesting to me than I had prior. And this is where there's a level of exploration that we all have to do, because I always say that passion is not something that you look under a rock or at the bottom of the ocean, but rather that you really have to search inside your heart. Mm-hmm. And it took me a long time to try different things to find something that was meaningful to me. And I can tell you one thing. So the idea of a growth mindset that we can achieve anything we want, to me, at first when I read it, it sounded ludicrous. Like, really, I can become anything? I don't think so. Like, other people can, which is a fixed mindset. I cannot. And I had to prove to myself in one way or another. And you read this into my introduction, where I ran marathons. Up until that point, I always told myself that I hate running. I can never run more than a mile. This is not for me. My knees hurt. I have a deviated septum. There's all these excuses that make it impossible. And then the mindset said that you just have to try and go for it every single day. And that's when the transformation happened, where I literally signed up for a marathon, and each week I started running an extra mile. And that extra mile proved to me that the impossible is possible. So whoever wants to discover what their passion is or what they're capable of doing is asking themselves, what am I afraid of? What is that something that I always wanted to do, but I was afraid to do it because I'm not good at it. I'm going to embarrass myself. Try that thing. Because over time, with practice and enough dedication, it can be achieved.
So with marathons, was that something you always wanted to do, but you just had some limiting beliefs? Or was it really just leaning into something you actually didn't want to do for the sake of proving to yourself that you can grow, even in areas where you have believed that you couldn't, or that, you felt limited? Yeah,
I actually full-heartedly believe that my body cannot run that many miles. It was a deep-rooted belief. And that's the reason why I chose it, because it seemed like an impossibility. And then if I told myself that if I can do that, what else can I do? And that's when the transformation happened. I've pursued different passions in my career, where now I'm working something that I'm truly passionate about and I really enjoy. I've overcome my fear of speaking. So I was completely terrified to utter 3 sentences in front of groups. And I've taken steps to overcome it to the point where it is so thrilling that what we're doing right now, it actually gives me a lot of energy. and I am pursuing this career of public speaking, training, coaching is something that went from a crippling fear to a passion. And all of it is because of this notion of what else can I do?
So you started asking different questions. You started changing the questions you were asking yourself and saying, what else can I do? And you went out and you looked at something that you felt was impossible and you really tackled it and just confronted it to prove to yourself that it was possible. What are some other tactics that worked for you? Well, you know, it sounds like experimentation was one. So you mentioned that you didn't just immediately know what you wanted to do, that it was like, okay, this more is, I'm capable of more. And then it sounds like there was an experimentation process of trying some things to figure out what you would find more meaning and purpose behind it. Do I have that right?
Yes. Yeah. I tried different things. So at first I played with the idea of doing YouTube videos, and then I played with other experiments like, do I want to go into personal training? Because I'm also very passionate about health. And what shifted for me was when I was in my speaking growing path, there was a contest that I participated in where I've done a 7-minute speech, and one person came up to me almost tearing up saying that my words were very suiting for him because he was very hard on his daughter, and what I said was very meaningful because my dad was very hard on me when he came to going and farming the land. And I've never thought that words can have such a power. And that's when things shifted, because I realized that if I can develop some skill that is in the benefit of others, then it's going to give me even more energy. So what we're doing here, where we're sharing stories and we're chit-chatting, hopefully this message reaches one person that they think, wonder if I can do that. And that changed for me everything, where now I want to impact as many lives as I can.
It's beautiful. And so when you made that transition to finding a deeper purpose and wanting to impact and help as many people as you could, were there any obstacles holding you back from that? I mean, you have this career, you have kind of the whole path that you've been on up to now. So what were some of the obstacles you had to face, and how did you face them to actually make that change?
Daily obstacles, Spencer. Every day there's I think the biggest obstacle that we have is our mindset, because we are constantly doubting our capabilities and we doubt what we can do, even though if you were to look back on what you have accomplished so far in your life, I'm pretty sure you've done some amazing things. And for some reason we forget, and then we constantly doubt ourselves, and we stumble and we fall, and we think that that's a sentence, that we are failures. In reality, we're just learning. And that's a continuous process that I go through even today, where at times I think that I'm the most badass person, that I'm doing incredible things, and then something humbles me where I don't do a good job at work, or I don't say something well in my speeches, and I don't inspire people the way I want to, and it's just pulling me back to ground, and like, do I really want to do this? But the big thing that we all have to recognize in this mindset is, the growth mindset, is that everything is practice. We're all continuously learning and bettering ourselves. So whatever failure, whatever setback, those are lessons that are supposed to be for us, not against us.
Yeah. And so being able to see each of those failures and setbacks as being something that was serving you, fed into your mindset to help you keep going, even though there were and are daily obstacles to being able to pursue this passion and this purpose that you have.
Right. Correct. Yeah. And this is where even my topics about burnout are kind of a different shift in perspective about stress and stress management, because most of us think that stress is something that we have to avoid, that is going to be something that's going to challenge our health and we need to stay away from, where again, it's the mindset. Stress, the right stress, the acute stress, not the chronic stress, and we can talk about that. The right amount of stress, the challenge, the pressure, it's actually beneficial. It helps us grow and evolve. Without stress, we would still be infants, just learning how to talk. But the pressure and the stress is something that's beneficial for us.
Absolutely. And I say this often to my team. I tell them, if you look back on your life at all the things you're most proud of and the experiences you really cherish, they're all tied, either immediately preceded by or accompanied by pain. Like, it's hard. There's a price to everything. Nothing comes free. And so that price is the stress. It's the pain. It's all of growth requires that stress and that pain. But on the other side, it's fantastic. To your point, as long as it's not chronic, if it's just the stress associated with that growth, it's such a valuable thing. And we can shift from being against the stress and just hoping we get the result while avoiding the stress, to embracing the stress and knowing we're going to get the result, then it totally changes our experience along the way. People talk about falling in love with the journey and, realizing that there's not a destination that's going to make you happy. And that is true, and it's important. But sometimes we think, yeah, I am in love with the journey. All the fun parts, all the easy parts, all the parts that feel good, all the times I get praise. Those parts of the journey are great. And we forget to be grateful for the challenges, the growth, the pain, the overcoming obstacles, the learnings, the failures and the setbacks that help shape and mold us. And so I love that perspective. So Sherban, let's say that someone's listening to this, and like, okay, these guys seem to think that there's a way for me to not feel burnt out. If we had to break it down for the listener and give them just a few important steps to take, let's say they're listening to this right now and they're like, I cannot stand what I'm doing. I'm burnt out. I feel empty every day. I feel no sense of purpose. I feel no sense of drive. I'm not happy with my life. I'm making plenty of money. I'm doing well, but I just feel empty. What are the first few things that they should do that could start to help them implement the things? We've talked about your story and we've walked them through some examples and we've touched on some tactics, but if we had to make it really easy and obvious for them, what would be the first set of things you'd tell them to do?
Okay, I'm going to go in so many directions and you have to pull me back because I want to share so many things with you and the audience. The first thing that we need to understand when it comes to burnout is, what is burnout? And burnout is a mental and physical stress, a mental and physical state where we are in a continuous stress mode for an extended period of time. So burnout is not something that 3 days we're stressed out and then that means that we're burnout. This happened over an extended period of time. And there's a spectrum on the burnout. You can be stressed where you're just tired all the time, or you can be stressed where you need to go to the doctor, where you don't know what to do with yourself because you're feeling sick. So there's that level of burnout where it's on the spectrum. The other thing is, you mentioned this, many people feel currently that burnout on a somewhat level of that spectrum. And a lot of times we think that we're alone and that it's only happening to us. 2/3 of employees report moderate to severe levels of burnout. So at times we feel so proud and our ego doesn't let us ask for help. And that's one of the things that I want to showcase and let everybody know, that we are all experiencing. And one tool that we can easily use is share this vulnerability with others. Because your boss may not know all the challenges that you have at home, and your partner or your significant other doesn't know all the challenges that you have at work. So when you're able to share and say, hey, Mr. Boss, I'm struggling right now at work, at home with this. Can I take a few hours less of work? Or at home saying, hey, I'm quite overwhelmed at work. What can you do to help me so that I can handle all this responsibility, because it's in the benefit of all of us. So asking for help, it's not a shame, it's a necessity.
So if someone is feeling stuck, they wake up to it, very first thing, they need to communicate. They need to talk to people. They need to express it. They need to work with the people around them. I think that's a great step to take. And you mentioned this, that, it's a chronic ongoing state
Uh-huh.
One of the things I like to point out to people when they feel stuck like this is we create these narratives or beliefs around what it means and why it is that are not true, and they keep us stuck. And one of the ones I hear is I'm working too hard or I'm working too much.
Mm-hmm.
And yet, if you ask those same people, when did you feel the most alive, the most purpose, the most excited? It's usually at a time where they were working really hard on something. They probably were. It's not the time where they're like, oh, you know what? Work was really relaxed and it was just kind of a really stable 9 to 5. And then I had a really good balance with my family life. And it was all just very balanced. It's like the things people find passion in, they usually end up working crazy hours and going hard and all this. And so we've had experiences where we've worked so hard and we felt alive and excited by it.
Mm-hmm.
And so this narrative, we know it's not true. We could just look at our own history to know it's not true that working hard is the problem or working too long is the problem. And so then once we break that false little narrative that we have, then we've got to figure out, well, what really is the problem? And so that we can start talking to the people in our life, asking for help, being vulnerable. But what advice would you give that person in figuring out what the real problem is? If it's not working too hard, if it's not working too long, how do they figure out what the real problem is?
So I always think about it because people say that they don't have enough time to do everything that they need to do in their day. And a lot of times may be true, but you have CEOs that have kids and family and so much more responsibilities that are able to do more than others. And to me is not about time management, but rather it's about...
Don't tell them about how we have the extra 14 hours every day. Us CEOs, don't tell them about the secret 14 extra hours we get.
I was right about to say that. Oh.
No, don't give away the secret that we get extra hours.
Well, now you cannot not tell them about the secret door of unlocking an additional 24 hours in a day. No, we all have the same 24 hours. It's just a matter of how we utilize those 24 hours. And I talk about not time management, but energy management. Because I look at our energy kind of like a battery in our phone. And the more we're capable of managing that battery, the more we would be able to do more things. So in order to have a full battery when you wake up, you have to get proper sleep. When we're so overwhelmed, the last thing that we do at night is I'm just gonna veg out on the couch and watch Breaking Bad in reruns for 3 hours. And instead of going to bed and getting a good night's sleep, we are zapping our battery because we're not getting the good quality sleep. If you're getting good quality sleep, the first thing in the morning is, we talked about this, what you think about the first thing in the morning affects and drains your battery. If you pick up the phone and now you're looking at your phone and you're seeing emails from your boss, you're seeing text that anger you, news that may bother you, then your battery keeps zipping faster and faster. I've heard one person say that when we reach out for our phone in the morning, it's like inviting 100 people in our bedroom. It's true. We're giving all of our energy away from the moment we pick up that phone. So taking care of your sleep and then taking care of your morning, doing some activities that you enjoy, being grateful, not rushing to go to work, but maybe spend some time with your kids and make them breakfast and ask them about their day. Maybe you just do a meditation, a stretch, you go for a walk, whatever it is, recharge your batteries even more. And that will give you the energy necessary to do more in your day.
One of my favorite books is called The 80-20 Principle by Richard Koch. And he built a multi-$100 million consulting practice and has been very successful in his life. And he attributes it all back to this belief of, the Pareto principle. For anyone who hasn't heard of it, it essentially says that 20% of the efforts create 80% of the outcomes. There's a lot of different applications of it. But one of the most important things that I took away from it is this concept of there's always too much to do. There's always everyone always has more priorities for me than I will get done today. And a lot of people, we want to be loved. We want to be liked. We want to be seen in a good light. And so we want to just go make everyone happy and do all their priorities. And when we do it, we don't feel what we thought we were going to feel, which is loved and appreciated and all that. We still feel empty. So there's no amount of doing everyone else's priorities that's going to get me there. And so the two things is, one, I got to make sure that if most of the things in my life are noise and are going to drain the battery, I got to be really explicit about the things that really will work for me. They're going to get me the results I want. They're going to get me where I want to be. At work, there's certain things that if I do them, they're going to really make my career better, and I can ignore a bunch of the other stuff. If in my family, there's certain activities that are really going to make my wife feel loved, and a bunch that don't. If I sit on the couch for 3 hours at the end of the night with my wife, she feels a tiny bit of love, but it's pretty meaningless. If we just talk deeply, looking in each other's eyes, connecting for 30 minutes, she feels so much more connected to me. So would I rather spend 3 hours and get a tiny result, or 30 minutes and get a really big result? So there's all these examples of where that battery's getting drained, and it's getting drained more, but producing a smaller outcome. And if we really are honest with ourselves, we're doing that all over the place when we get burnout. But if we can shift and focus on the few things that are creating all the good outcomes that we want, do a little more of those, all of a sudden we feel excited, we feel jazzed, we feel really like empowered, like, wow, I'm going to get what I want. I'm going to be successful. And so when you realize that 80% of your day is just trash, it just is. It doesn't matter how effective you are. Yeah. I really manage my time and my day at 80% of what I do. I still look back and go, yeah, I could have got away with not doing most of that. 20% really created all the good outcomes.
Oh, I love it. Yeah. I also talk about this principle. And to me, it's interesting because as we grow in our lives, we continuously pile more things on our plate. And we find it difficult to say no. Of course, no is another tool that we can discuss about. But I want to touch upon what you said. When I was in my low phase, before I discovered a growth mindset, is I always told myself that I need to apply to new jobs. But the weekend would come, and I would always find something else to do. Oh, my backyard needs some work. And oh, it's my friend's birthday I have to go to. Oh, I need to go grocery shopping. I would always prioritize the non-essentials. But if you do the 80-20 rules, like you said, and I would have spent an hour, 2 hours dedicated for applying to a job, I'm pretty sure I would have found that job way faster. And I wouldn't have felt bad about myself, because most of us do all the unessential first, and then the important ones kind of are left to the side because we feel overwhelmed by them, and then we feel bad about ourselves. So if you flip it around and see, okay, what are the 20% that are going to move the needle towards what I truly want in my life, and what can I leave to the side? In those moments, then we're going to really make progress, and it's going to make us feel good, and we're utilizing that battery properly.
And so let's maybe to hit on one more tactic. I know we could go all day with different tactics that you are passionate about and teach, but let's go into the one that you just introduced, because it's a key aspect of, we can say focus on 20%, but what that means is that 80% of the stuff you got to say no to. And Sherban, I don't like saying no. I feel bad when I say no. It doesn't feel good. It feels like I'm disappointing people. That just makes my burnout worse, makes me feel terrible. I don't know how to say no. So help us understand, how can people say no? How can they learn to say no? What's the importance of no?
Here's the thing. When you say yes to something that you really don't want to, you feel anger towards the person who asked you, and you feel anger towards yourself. Because now you said you put on more on your plate that you couldn't even handle, and you are committed to something that you might or may not be able to do. And it's a two-way street, especially when it comes to work. If we are unable to really work with whoever's putting all those things on our plate, our productivity is going to suffer, because now you have way too much that you cannot handle, and you're not going to achieve them all. You're going to look bad. People are going to think that you're not a productive person. And because they're looking at you and reflecting on you that you're not a productive person, then you're going to say, well, I'm not going to do it after you committed. So then you look even worse. So it is not detrimental to you, but it's kind to you and the other person to be able to say no. That's helpful for everybody. And if it's your boss, you know, some people ask me like, Sherban, how can I say no to my boss? That's true. Sometimes you cannot. But I've had my boss come to me and ask me to do many more things that I could. And in those cases, you have to be very transparent and over-communicate with your boss. Like, hey, I have these tasks that you already assigned to me, and you gave me these extra ones. I don't feel that I can do all of them. Which ones am I going to prioritize? Which ones are the 20%? And the moment you say, okay, you prioritize these as a 20%, then just know that the rest of them may not get done. And then it's a different way of saying no, but the boss knows so that you don't feel bad. But even when it comes to with a friend, he comes to you and says, hey, can you help me move my fridge this weekend? And you say yes, but you already committed to other things. And now you're going there and you're mad that you're missing out a few things. You're mad at your friend. Your friend doesn't understand what's happening. He gets mad at you. Why are you mad? You said yes. And then you're ruining a relationship because you weren't able to say no, a kind no.
I love that. And one of my favorite books that hits on this principle is called Essentialism. And he gives a whole list in one of the chapters of ways you can say no, that if someone's listening to this and they want to improve saying no, I highly recommend that book in the specific chapter where he talks about it. And being able to say no in a myriad of ways that are all very polite, very kind, very caring. And like you said, they show more respect, more love, more attention, more care. And so we've got some of the wrong associations with no. And we're conditioned to think that every problem must be solved with a yes, with a more, with a adding. You know, addition is the solution. But in reality, a lot of these problems, especially around burnout, subtraction is the solution. And not subtraction in the sense of, oh, I got to just work less hours. I got to get more meaning out of my work. So I got to be focused on fewer things. I got to be more successful in what I'm doing. I got to have a stronger sense of purpose around what I'm doing. And so maybe you don't need to work less hours. Maybe you need to be doing less things, be pulled in less directions, be more focused, have a stronger why behind what you're doing. There's so many things that then can shape, but you got to subtract some of the non-essential, some of the noise in order to get to that. One of my favorite quotes in the world is that every yes must be defended by 1,000 no's. And if you say yes to one thing, you just got to know that with that, now I have to say no 1,000 times if I'm ever going to be successful on that one thing I said yes to. If my word matters at all, then I can't say yes to lots of things. I have to say yes to a few things and say no to most things. And one of my biggest realizations in interviewing a lot of very successful people and entrepreneurs is that there are a few skills that correlate extremely strongly to long-term financial success. And one of them is the ability to say no. Someone's ability to say no directly correlates to how successful they will be, because that person is able to then focus and be more strategic and wield more leverage. There's almost nothing more high leverage than being able to defend your time and employ it in a more effective way. That's where, we've hit on all these elements. There's the higher leverage mindset of a growth mindset that opens new doors and allows you to accomplish things you previously thought were impossible. There's the leverage you can get in being able to reshape your life then coming from that. Start changing and trying new things, experimenting. Then there's the power of being able to communicate with people and share with them, connect with them. That is a form of leverage, because now you're not alone. You're going to get more support with no other changes. And then there's this concept of being able to focus down and say no to things so that we can concentrate on what's truly essential and get the results we want, and to have this higher sense of ownership and accomplishment. Look, there's so many other things I'm sure you could teach and could help us with, but we're getting to the end of our time. So if someone is excited about some of the things they learned, maybe they want to start practicing these things, maybe they have follow-up questions or need help from someone. Sometimes we need a coach or a support system. What would be the best way for them to reach out to you or contact you?
Yeah, they can go to my website, serbanmare.com, SERBANMARE.com. They can follow me on LinkedIn or on Instagram. I share content there. And if there's someone who resonated with any of these messages and they need more clarification, please reach out to me either on Instagram, LinkedIn, or on at my email. I'm happy to help. It's more problematic than we know, and it's more problematic than we want to admit. And the more we help each other, the better we will be.
I love it. Wise words to end the show. Don't suffer in silence. Reach out to Sherban, reach out to people, and if you can see these signs of burnout, make a change right now. Make a decision right now to go take action and start adopting a growth mindset, making a change that can really change your life, the way that it did for Sherban and the way that it has for many other people. Certainly, I've seen it in my own life. So, Sherban, thank you so much for being so kind, coming, sharing your insights, and all the links that you just shared we'll put in our show notes. And so feel free to go into the show notes, click on those, and connect with Sherban. Sherban, thank you so much.
Thank you for having me, Spencer. It was a great conversation and great questions.
Hey, before you go, I have a small request. Our mission is to empower as many people as possible to maximize their potential through the power of leverage. Could you help us in this mission by leaving a review on iTunes, Spotify, or YouTube? And if you know just one person who would benefit from today's episode, would you please share it with them? Your support means the world to us, and we are thrilled to have you in the community. Thank you for being a part of our journey and helping us grow. You can find show notes for today's show and past shows at lessonsinleverage.com, which also has links to connect with me personally and connect with our various podcast channels across your favorite social networks. A big thanks to Solve.cloud, who sponsored this episode. They're a group of expert consultants that help SaaS and financial services companies to implement, optimize, and manage Salesforce.com. They can help you with custom integration solutions and are helping customers to implement some of the most important generative AI technologies. You can find them at solved.cloud. That's SOLVD.cloud is the URL. Thanks again, and we'll talk soon.